and then my recent experience at the smaller company, a startup from the Bay Area, was really a transformational kind of experience for me. So let me share with you a typical DevOps story, which is my story at Climate Corp, and I realized that's actually a common story. When I landed at Climate is one of the companies that use AWS extensively at that time, 3 or 4 years ago. And it was one of the early customers at AWS. When I landed in the job, my manager asked me two questions. Do we have a good ROI on our infrastructure? Are we moving fast enough? I was assigned the role of a director of engineering for the infrastructure, so I had to really dig deep into our infrastructure. I came just to him after 24 hours and I told him no and no. We're not really having a good ROI and we're not moving really fast enough. We have lots of issues and we're overspending, and even we have performance issues with the amount of spending that we are throwing at AWS, or money that we're throwing at AWS every month. So basically we did a 6-month project to optimize and make ourselves move fast. And we were about to celebrate and take our bonuses, but within four weeks after that, we regressed back to the old habits of just running inefficient. Things are not really moving as fast as we hoped. So we basically reinitiated the project again for 3 months. We were able to do it, and we achieved that. But we realized that we're going through that cycle of success, failure, success, failure. And it was really tough to see this is happening over and over again. And I was even sitting with my team at that time, and we just asked that question, are we just a bunch of idiots repeating the same problem over and over and over again? So I decided at that time to just go back to the community and talk to other engineers and managers or engineering managers and ask them about the pains and whether they're having and whether they have the same cycle or not. And actually talked to all those companies, big and smaller companies, and they said, you know what, we have the same issues. We always, chase, those issues in day 1 and day 2 after we, after the initial adoption of the cloud infrastructure. And that was a big problem. And this is actually the founding story of Magalix. And this is our mission, is basically to make sure that teams are not really repeating those cycles and they're running efficient and they're running fast enough. And of course, the technology is moving fast. The market is really moving fast. So we're really adapting to that. And that's why we're here at Kubecon, trying to share our story and also hear other stories and see if we can help. So quickly about us, in the nutshell, Magalix actually has a team coming also from leading cloud providers. We went through those problems ourselves. We have some of our users who experienced Magalix so far, and they were able to reduce at least some of those pains and not to go through them. We are also Google and Azure partners. Our platform support all the major cloud providers: IBM, Google, AWS, Azure, DigitalOcean, and we also support OnPrem. We're a VC-backed company. We're based in Seattle, but our team is now even more distributed after COVID across the world, in Europe, in the US, and also in other places. So this is just quickly about Magalix. Now let's get into it and just have a common ground. We all know that the cloud native was all about bringing agility and giving the software engineers and DevOps power, and making sure that they're able to achieve what they want to much faster. 10x much faster than before, even 10x much faster than the VM-based infrastructure. Not just to compare it with the on-prem. Comparing it to the on-prem is old news right now. But that brings a lot of complexities, and that makes working with Kubernetes a challenge. And that's why there's a conference. There are lots of tracks, lots of documentation, lots of books around that. This means that the technology is not easy really to comprehend and run with it, especially when your team grows and when your business and complexity grows. So we're here not to think about yet another UI or yet another automation that will help you to do certain stuff on top of Kubernetes. We know that there are other companies doing a really great job in that, whether the cloud providers, the major cloud providers, they would give you the managed version of Kubernetes to abstract some things for you, or even for third parties like good companies like Rancher and others, will give you a really nice and easy to use user interface with some simple automations. But the question is, for everyone, how do you make sure that you're production ready every day? Especially with the growth of your team, the changes that you have in your containers and software in general every day. That's a question that everyone should ask, and this is a challenge that many teams face every day. Another set of questions that we also ask ourselves and ask our users: how do you guarantee governance and operational excellence? These are now highly related together. If you take a look at how Kubernetes works, you will realize that almost everything right now is written as a spec. So it's a configuration plus something that affects your operations. So for example, changing the limits and requests is a configuration piece, but impacts your operational excellence. So you want to make sure that you have the right governance on top of that. You're applying it with the right process in place, but at the same time, you're applying the right values. These are two important factors that you always should have. So how do you apply the best practices every day? How do you enforce your own standards? How do you run efficient all the time? These are questions that wake up a lot of DevOps engineers in the middle of the night, and they start asking those questions, especially when they get more mature in their cloud native journey. How do you guard your infrastructure? How do you prevent bad configurations leaking into your infrastructure, regardless of the team size and the infrastructure size? Obviously, the bigger your team and the bigger your infrastructure, the bigger the challenge to guard your Kubernetes or guard your infrastructure and apps from being misconfigured and being mismanaged. Usually teams add some sort of trust-based models, that do not really commit anything before we could review it together. Well, this is fine. This works when your team is small, but the faster you move, it's easy for your engineers and for your team to overlook that, and at the end they would, bad configurations eventually would find their ways to your infrastructure. And then, how do you act fast with the right workflows? This is also important. You cannot just say, well, I'm going to prevent my infrastructure, I'm going to stop everything, nothing is going to go wrong. No, of course, there are lots of things that can go wrong with your configurations. How do you know, how do you actually act when a bad configuration finds its place to your infrastructure? Either by reverting it back automatically with some mechanisms or guardrails in place, or at least just being informed early enough about it. According to Datadog latest survey, more than 50% of the containers are running as root. And most of the time, DevOps discover this by chance. How do you build the right workflow around that? When this happens, who should be notified? What's the channel? How can you really follow up with that? This is really, really important so that you can guarantee the governance and the operational excellence that we talked about at the beginning. And this is what Magalix is all about. We have actually 4 feature areas, or 4 products, if you will. The first one we call it Kube Advisor, which is basically an extensible OPA, Open Policy Agent-based engine, which basically use the Brigo language to specify some policies. We ship with it some best practices that are included already, such as checking if your containers are running as root. We also allow you to build your own advisors, and there's a way for you to tell your developers how to fix those violations. And of course, we provide those also as part of the best practices that are included in the product. The second product is the Kube Optimizer, which is around being efficient, around being having the right ROI. We would like to prevent waste and starvation. We would like to reduce your cost of ownership of the infrastructure, and of course automate some of that, because resources management can get really overwhelming very quickly for you. KubeGuard is basically built on top of Kube Advisor, rather than waiting for a policy to be violated after the and get an after the fact report, you can actually prevent bad configurations from finding their way to your cluster. And this can happen either within your CI/CD process, or you can actually have use our agent as an admission controller inside your cluster that can actually prevent anyone from doing even a manual kind of update to any of the configurations that would violate any of your policies. And then finally, the Kube notifier, which basically provides notifications and workflows of what when something unexpected happens, a violation of a policy, or a change in the resources that would make it really hard for you to manage or to run efficient and keep your ROI in healthy state. And you can integrate with lots of tools like PagerDuty, Grafana, Slack, Jira, and so on. So these are the four main areas that we support or give you kind of insights and help you to achieve the governance and operational excellence. All right, how it works. We promise that you can get results within 10 minutes or even less in some cases. The way it works is very simple. If you have your Kubernetes cluster already provisioned, you can just go and register at our console. We'll give you a command line, a kubectl command line, that would basically install our agent. And we have all the details at our docs telling you what the agent does. And our agent is open source, by the way. And then our agent will start sending some basic data to our backend. And then you get the reports back. You can, as I mentioned, integrate through the KubeGuard, integrate through the CI/CD, and get early results if there are any violations. And you can, of course, see the reports that are going to come back, of course, as part of those APIs, or you can see the reports through our console. And as I mentioned, also the Kube notifier can send you all the notifications and alerts to any of the tools that you like. They're typically using every day, like Jira, Grafana, Slack, and so on. So this is how it works. You can connect as many clusters as you want. We're now fully SaaS, so the overhead on your cluster is very minimal, just the agent, a few megabytes, and that's it, no more than that. So this is just in a nutshell how it works. Cool, any questions so far? I think anyone can just unmute and ask questions.
I think you may have to give Girish and Sudeep talking permissions, as I made you the host. Other than that.
Okay. We can do that.
Yep, if you just right click, if you go into their names, you can enable talking.
Sudeep.
There you go. Yeah, so Sudeep, Girish, anyone who has a question, we can stop here for a second before we get into the demo. Otherwise, we can continue.
Yep. All right, cool. So the next step is actually to jump into a demo really quickly. So let me do this right away. All right. Okay, cool. So this is our console, and the home dashboard usually give you just an overview of your clusters. This particular account has 6 connected clusters. The icons here would tell you the infrastructure that this Kubernetes cluster is running on. So it could be DigitalOcean, AWS, or Google, or Azure, and we support others as well. And even if you just have OnPrem, we can we support that with some limitations that we can actually discuss towards the end if anyone would have questions about it. But the experience is fairly simple. If you would like to connect your cluster, you basically say, I would like to connect one of my clusters. I'm just going to give it a KubeCon test here as a name, and then just KubeCon, no spaces, and then create. And then what happens here is, let me zoom in a bit. You get that kubectl command, and that kubectl command basically is going to install the agent, and you can see the YAML file, the deployment YAML file. It's just a single container It's not a daemon set. And that container basically will start collecting data. It's a read-only container initially. Once that container is installed, basically your container will appear here as connected. This is basically the first sign that your container, sorry, your cluster is properly connected, and now we're going to start giving you recommendations. So let me dig into one of those clusters here. So at the side nav, you can see issues, reported issues, which basically anything that's related to KubeAdvisor, optimizations, how can you really optimize your resources, and then workloads are just a different view of the issues and optimizations. And that view is particularly helpful for developers. So if one of your developers is, let's say, interested to see all the issues for a particular namespace or a particular pod that or microservice that they're responsible for, they can actually just go to that view. And we have here the Kube Optimizer, KubeAdvisor, where you can configure these two. And of course, we support adding team members to the console so that you can all collaborate on what can be done with Magalix. So let me get into one of the issues here just to show you, give you a hint of what kind of stuff we report. So usually in the issues screen, you will see how many compliances, how many violations you have, and those are also broken down by an advisor. An advisor basically is just a very simple abstraction or a grouping of policies. So you can create an advisor to, let's say, report anything that's related to observability, or you can have an advisor to report anything that's related to pod security policies, like the one that we have here. So for example, in that particular case, we're saying that out of the 12 containers inside that cluster, there are 2 that are running with escalated privilege or privilege escalation allowed or enabled. And if you click on that, basically it's gonna give you the list of entities that are being impacted. And you can actually dig into even more details here. Let me zoom in. I know that I have a big screen. That might make it hard to see what's here. So basically you see when was the last scan. We're proactively scanning the cluster at the moment every 24 hours, a description of the issue, and of course the evidence that are being collected. The YAML file that we've seen that prove that actually you're having that issue. The allow privilege escalation is enabled. And there's also a section that would tell you how to resolve the issue. It usually just detailed instructions, what kind of flag you need to change in that particular case to disable that, and the history of the issue for the last 30 days. We track it for 30 days. Once the issue is resolved, this is going to turn from red to green. This means that you have a compliance in that case. So any kind of policies is basically spec'd through a rego. And here actually, this is a link to the policy itself. So if I click on that, I can actually see the rego policy that actually detected that issue. And you can update it, you can change it anytime. And you can, let's say, narrow it to a specific namespace or ignore namespaces. You can do lots of things with the policy changes itself. So this is just an example of the type of issues that are built in and you can do. You can actually create your own advisor. So I can go ahead and say, you know what, I would like to create a new advisor. Let's say I will call it owner or label checker. So let's say I would like to make sure that I'm enforcing a few labels for all my pods and containers. Just an example. I can write the description for that. And by the way, we support Markdown. So you can actually write fairly well formatted documents that your developers are going to see in the reports later on. And you can actually even say this advisor is going to be applied to a specific cluster. So let's say I would like to apply to the Azure cluster that we're just seeing. Click create. Now, I will not receive any recommendation before I have at least 1 or 2 policies created. So I can say, hey, I would like to create the policy. You can write the description of it. You can say what kind of resolution that you would like your developer to apply whenever there is a violation of a policy. So we have here a template policy that can be used, and I just give it a name. Let's say policy 1. Again, I would just add anything here, policy 1 header, and then how to resolve instructions. And I can preview, of course, the markdown. So I'll just create here, since this policy does not have anything in it, all the all the containers will be reported as violations. And then I just click update. If I go back again to Kube Advisor, this advisor is now listed here, and actually Magalix is gonna pick up that advisor every 24 hours, apply to all the entities that you specified within the policy. If you do not specify or tell any kind of or limit it to any pods or workloads, is going to basically apply to all the pods. So with that just simple policy that you can write, or a simple way that you can define an advisor here, you can actually enforce the label checker, or you can enforce anything that you think that need to be enforced within your infrastructure. And you can have different policies for different environments. So let me jump quickly to then the optimizations part. See, the optimizations part basically is all about how you can improve resources utilization and how you can save some money. In resources utilization in general, resources allocation, there are many cases. There are cases of starvation, cases of waste, and you would like to make sure that you are not you're not really drifting towards one of those cases most of the time. So you can report if you're wasting CPU resources, if you're wasting memory, if some of your containers are having starvation, which will impact the performance or the stability of your pods and cluster. So let me actually dig into one of those. If I take a look at the CPU, let's say wasting resources, and there's this particular agent, and again, I'm gonna just zoom in here to make sure that you'll be able to read it. Here we report what's the current request and limit, the CPU request and limit for that container, and the recommended limits and request. And basically this is, again, as we call it, the evidence that we collected that would tell you why we think that the new reported data, the new configurations would make sense to you. This is how much you've been using over time. And if I just zoom in a bit, this is your CPU usage. This is the pattern that we were able to capture. So based on that, you do not really need to set the core for the limit for one core, or set the request for 150 millicores. You can still do them for 50. Change those for 50 and 100. Now we also take a look at, in that particular case, we also take a look at the throttling. So we know that a lot of teams really suffer from the throttling when they set the limits to a low value. And in this particular case, we actually make sure that you do not get any throttling, even if you reduce the limits from 1 core to 100 millicores. And we keep monitoring that. If for any reason the value that is proposed or that you applied would give you throttling, we're going to report this. And of course, the recommendation itself is going to change, is going to suggest to you to get to a higher limits so that you avoid throttling in general. The last one, and the optimization that I would like just to quickly jump to, is the cost saving. So the cost saving part is all about figuring out the right node types or right VMs that match your workloads, that match the workloads that you have. And this is something that we report. If there is a chance for you to save money by just shuffling around some resources, we're going to report that. So in our recommendations, we usually tell you what do you need to do. So for example, this is Azure-based cluster. So been using 3 nodes of this type, and now we're suggesting to the user to have actually 3 node pools, which is going to reduce the available cores from 5 to 3 roughly, and this is the same for memory. And actually, this is just based on an evidence, how much CPU and memory you're using right now. And here we're telling you, based on different models, how much you expected to save by the end of the year. So in that cluster, it's a really small cluster. So you're expected to save around $3,400. And the evidence that we have here actually would tell you why. So this is, those charts would tell you how much you're using right now, how much you're allocating in terms of requests and limits, and how much is available. And that red area is huge. You want to, in general, reduce that red area and make sure that, that you do not have a lot of waste. If you do this and apply that, it's not going to impact your performance. Your CPU and memory utilization is still going to be within the healthy ranges as we are proposing here, and you're still going to save a lot of money. So this is for the Kube optimizer. I'll stop here for questions. I just wanted to give you hints of the product. There are lots of other features that you can explore yourself, but just wanted to give you hints and walk you through the main just kind of features and the console, and of course you can explore it yourself. Later on, we have a 14 days free trial. You get access to all the features for free during that time. Any
Cool.
questions?
Yeah, Mohammed, thanks a lot for that. Ayush actually put in a question in the Q&A about on-prem, but Ayush, I'll let you go ahead and ask it if you get on mute.
Okay. You want me to read the question?
Sure.
Or you can do it, please, if you can.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll read it, and then if Ayush, if you have anything else you want to add to it, feel free to jump in. But he basically asked a simple question of, does Magalix support on-premise applications too, or just cloud?
Yes, we do support on-prem. The only piece that's going to be missing on-prem is this recommendation. So we will not be able to tell you how much you can save, but we will tell you the best possible configurations for your VMs. So rather than telling you, hey, you need to use, let's say, M5 X large instead of M5 2X large, what we're going to tell you in that case, you need to have a VM of, let's say, 16 gigabyte memory and 4 cores. But we cannot tell you beyond that because we do not know what kind of configurations, and we do not yet sense the kind of management platform that you have underneath Kubernetes. But other than that, in terms of Kube Advisor and any other feature, it works identical to how it works on the cloud. So we support on-prem with the exception of the cost saving.
Cool. Thanks for that. Is there anyone else who has a question? You can also raise your hand and we can enable chat for you as well.
Cool. You set up, oh, yeah.
We have Ayush raising his hand. You can go ahead and unmute. Ayush, you should be able to talk.
All right, so I have one more question. Like, you said something about the CI/CD pipelining with KubeGuard. Can you please explain that again?
Sure. Yeah. So we have right now a set of APIs that you can use to send your spec to our backend. So you can say basically you're asking Kube Advisor, does that spec violate any of my policies? And then you're going to get a response back telling you, yes, it violates these 2 or 3 policies, or no, actually it passes all your policies. And then from that point, you can actually pass or fail your build. So this is basically what we mean by the CI/CD. This feature actually is behind the feature flag. So if you're interested to give it a try, just connect your cluster, and we're happy to help you with that. Does that answer your question, Ayush?
Sure thing. Yeah, it does.
Cool.
Thanks.
Other questions? All right, cool. So maybe the last slide here. You can do more with the features that we just mentioned, or the products that we have. You can increase your team productivity because basically the more you add your team members and the early feedback they get they can move faster. And we've seen this ourselves with some of our users. Of course, it's all about managing configurations the right way. Sometimes you would like to enforce some of the configs across the whole cluster, regardless of the microservice or specific pod. You get also all the visibility, as we've seen some of it, and we actually also send you email reports on a regular basis telling you what is going on inside your cluster. And of course, you can optimize and save money. One piece that maybe I did not mention here is in the demo is the automation part. You can actually apply some of the recommendations automatically. And maybe I can actually jump quickly into this. So if you go to the optimization, there's the automation part. So for example, we had a container that we wanted to change the limit in the request of that container. I can actually apply that. I can tell Magalix to apply that recommendation for you. So I can click here. So basically going to queue it and send it to the agent, and our agent actually is going to do the update for you. So even that would save you more money. So, or sorry, more time. And then you get the results, and we actually consider all the cases. We do not update everything at once, and we make sure that we do not move to the next one before your previous container comes online. So we have all the checks that you would typically do when you make such a change in your pod. And we support OPA as SaaS, so you do not have to install all the OPA engine and manage it yourself and build your own workflows. That's a really tedious task, especially if you have many clusters. It's just one interface. You can do everything from that interface, and you can apply policies, pick and select policies that you would like to apply. In addition to the built-in policies that we provide you also based on what we learned from the community and collectively from our users. And of course, enforce your own standards. They're not necessarily best practices for the community, but best practices for your team. You would like to enforce certain labels or certain values and so on. You can definitely enforce all of these very quickly. Cool. So we're happy to help. We're happy to assist. Again, we are a startup that on a mission to help others to move fast, because we felt those pains ourselves before Magalix, during Magalix, as engineers with our own infrastructure. We use Kubernetes internally to build all that infrastructure that you see here, and of course with our users. Feel free to try it yourself. We have a 14-day trial, as I mentioned. Or if you would like, we can actually walk you through a more detailed demo. And we help also teams to build their own policies. So we're happy also to help you beyond just connecting your cluster and getting the basics. We can actually bring you up to speed with OPA and Rego, and even help you authoring some of the policies.
Cool. Thanks, Mohammed. So I think in addition to that, if you have any questions about our pricing, just go to magalix.com/pricing. As Mohammed said, we have a free tier that you can always have forever free, which will reset every 3 to 6 months, but nonetheless gives you enough time to try out the features and get recommendations. Our 14-day free trial gives you a preview of the startup tier, and you'll be able to put this into 2 clusters. And we scale with your clusters. And then depending on how your business works, if you want to talk to us about, today, for instance, we did a demo earlier where someone said that they were running 16 mostly identical clusters for their clients. They're a DevOps consultancy. With those people, we can also work out something for you. It all depends on as Mohammed said, your custom solution. So we're happy to work with you as a service offering on your policy, if we need to author any specific policies for you, or you want to figure out how to make policies work from one cluster to another, happy to co-work on that with you. And if you have any questions, again, check out magalix.com/pricing, or find us today on the CNCF Slack, #6-Kubecon-Magalix, and we'll be happy to chat with you.
Cool. Thank you, everyone, and we'll be available for any questions after that. Thank you very much for attending. Yep. And enjoy the rest of your conference.
Yep. Thanks a lot, folks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.